I never thought a simple conversation could change my life forever. It all started when Lila Monroe, someone I barely knew, pulled me aside one evening and said something that made my stomach drop. She told me that my wife, Marissa, was cheating on me with her husband, Derek. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was some kind of joke, but the look in her eyes was serious. It was like she carried a weight that I wasn't ready for. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I remember feeling frozen, my mind racing and heart pounding. Marissa had always been distant lately, but I didn't want to believe it. We had been together for years, and I trusted her more than anyone. Yet something in Lila's tone made me start questioning everything. I couldn't stop replaying the small things I had noticed, the secretive texts, her sudden late nights at work, and the little lies that now seemed bigger than ever. I felt confused, angry, and scared all at the same time. Meeting Lila that night felt like stepping into a storm I couldn't escape. She seemed calm but confident, like she already knew how all this would unfold. There was a strange energy about her, a mix of danger and curiosity, and I couldn't look away. I wanted to ask her how she knew, but fear and disbelief held me back. I wondered if she was messing with me or if this was really happening. Despite everything, there was something magnetic about Lila. She wasn't just dropping a bomb and walking away. She stayed and spoke to me like she actually cared. It was confusing because she wasn't supposed to be on my side, yet there she was, giving me a glimpse of truth I didn't want to face. I felt torn between my life with Marissa and the possibility that everything I believed in was a lie. Even though the night was unsettling, I couldn't stop thinking about Lila after that conversation. Her words kept echoing in my mind, making me replay every memory with Marissa in a new, painful light. I knew something had to change, but I had no idea what the future would hold. That moment, the moment Lila told me the truth about Marissa and Derek, was the beginning of a story I couldn't have imagined. My life was about to be turned upside down, and I didn't even realize it yet. After that night with Lila, I couldn't stop thinking about what she had told me. I started noticing things I had ignored before. Marissa seemed distracted all the time, always checking her phone in secret or smiling at messages she didn't want me to see. Little things like receipts that didn't add up or sudden late work trips started piling up in my mind. I wanted to believe she was innocent, but every small detail made me feel more uneasy. I tried talking to my best friend, Nolan Pierce, about it. He's the kind of guy who tells it like it is, no sugarcoating. I could see him worrying as I explained everything. He told me to be careful, to watch my back, and not to rush into anything. But it was impossible to ignore what I was feeling. It was like my whole world was tilting, and I didn't know which way was safe. Every day became harder. I found myself checking Marissa's behavior, noticing the way she avoided eye contact, how she seemed impatient with me for no reason. I wanted to trust her, but Lila's warning kept replaying in my head. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, not knowing if I'd fall or if I was just imagining things. At the same time, I felt anger simmering under the surface. I couldn't stop asking myself why this was happening. How could the person I loved the most betray me? And why did Lila know all of this? Part of me wanted to confront Marissa immediately, but another part of me wanted more proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes, or I knew I'd regret acting too soon. Then there was Lila. She seemed calm while I was spiraling. Whenever we met, she dropped little hints about Marissa and Derek, nothing too obvious, just enough to make me think. It was frustrating and terrifying. I didn't fully trust her, but I couldn't ignore her either. Somehow, she knew more than anyone else, and I couldn't figure out why she was helping me, or why she was even interested in me at all. Every day became a mixture of fear, confusion, and doubt. I was living in this strange in-between, where I couldn't fully trust my wife, but I also couldn't fully trust Lila. It was exhausting and lonely. I felt trapped, like my life had been turned upside down overnight. Every small sign, every subtle action, seemed to confirm Lila's warning, and I started preparing myself for the worst. The tension was unbearable. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. I couldn't go back to the way things were. The moment Lila spoke, she opened a door I couldn't close, and I had no choice but to walk through it. A few days later, everything came to a head. Lila invited me to meet her alone at a quiet cafe. I remember sitting across from her, heart racing, unsure if I was ready for what she was about to say. She leaned in and spoke softly, almost like she was afraid I wouldn't believe her. She told me she had proof that Marissa had been seeing Derek behind my back. I felt my world spin. Proof. I couldn't even imagine what that meant. At first, I wanted to deny it. I wanted to tell myself it wasn't true, that maybe Lila was exaggerating or lying. But she didn't leave me any room to doubt her. She handed me a small folder, discreetly filled with messages, emails, and subtle clues that Marissa and Derek had been hiding. I couldn't look at it at first. I was afraid of what I'd find, but a part of me knew I had to face the truth. When I finally opened the folder, it felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Every message, every detail confirmed what Lila had said. Marissa had been hiding this from me for months. I could feel my hands shake, and my mind went blank. It was like the life I knew had been replaced by something cruel and unfamiliar. I left the cafe without saying much. Lila didn't push me. She just watched quietly, letting me process everything. I felt a mix of emotions I didn't know how to handle: anger, betrayal, sadness, and disbelief all at once. The person I had trusted more than anyone in the world had been lying to me every single day. And it wasn't just Marissa. Derek, the person I had thought was a friend, had also been part of the betrayal. That night, I confronted Marissa at home. I tried to stay calm, to ask her gently, but my voice trembled with the weight of the truth I now held in my hands. She denied everything at first, her eyes wide, pretending innocence. But I had already seen it. I had the evidence right there. The denial only made the betrayal hurt even more. I felt completely alone, even though she was sitting right in front of me. After that, I didn't know who to trust. Lila had opened my eyes to the truth, but it also made me question everything about my marriage, my life, and even myself. How had I not seen it before? How could someone I loved so deeply do something so cruel? The pain was sharp, like a wound that wouldn't heal, and I realized my life was about to change forever. Even through the heartbreak, there was a strange relief. I finally knew the truth. It hurt, but at least I wasn't living a lie anymore. And somehow, in the middle of this chaos, Lila's presence made me feel a small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. A week after I confronted Marissa, Lila did something I never expected. She invited me over under the pretense of talking, but this time, it wasn't just about Marissa and Derek. She looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before and told me something that made my heart skip a beat. She admitted she had feelings for me. I froze. I didn't know what to say. After everything that had happened, I wasn't ready for anything else, especially not this. Lila explained that she had been drawn to me even before she told me about Marissa and Derek. She said she couldn't stand seeing someone like me hurt, and that she wanted to help me find happiness again. It was confusing because everything was so messy. My marriage was falling apart, I felt betrayed, and now this woman, the one who had revealed the truth, was confessing feelings for me. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: shock, fear, and something like curiosity I couldn't ignore. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to get involved with anyone else while my marriage was still a mess. But Lila was patient. She didn't push me. She just stayed close, offering support in ways I didn't even realize I needed. There was a warmth and understanding in her that I had never felt before. It made me think about all the times I had felt alone and trapped in my own life. Suddenly, Lila became a light in that darkness. As days passed, I noticed that I was looking forward to seeing her. Her words, her presence, her calmness, it was something I hadn't felt in years. At the same time, I started realizing that my anger toward Marissa and Derek was mixing with this new, confusing attraction. I was torn between wanting revenge and feeling something unexpected for Lila. It was dangerous yet thrilling. I could feel myself changing. I was no longer the helpless, betrayed husband I had been when Lila first told me the truth. I started thinking strategically about ways to take control of my life and protect my heart. And Lila was there, quietly guiding me, making me feel strong without even saying much. Her confidence gave me confidence. Her care gave me hope. This was the point where I knew my life wasn't going back to how it was. Marissa had broken my trust, Derek had betrayed my friendship, and now Lila had shown me a path I never thought I'd take. It wasn't just love. It was a mix of survival, empowerment, and the chance to finally take control. For the first time since everything began, I felt like I could breathe. But I also knew one thing. If I wanted to move forward, I had to play this carefully. There were hearts at stake, and I couldn't afford to make mistakes. And in that moment, I realized that my story was no longer just about betrayal. It was about what I would do next, and how Lila would change everything. After spending more time with Lila, I felt myself changing. The man who had been hurt, confused, and betrayed was slowly becoming someone more cautious, more aware, and surprisingly more confident. I still loved Marissa once, but that trust had been shattered. Now, with Lila, I could see a way to take control of my life again. I started noticing things differently: how I carried myself, how I spoke, even how I looked at the people around me. I began thinking about ways to protect myself emotionally and make sure that Marissa and Derek couldn't hurt me again. Small things at first. I started observing them quietly, noting their routines, seeing the little cracks in their behavior. It wasn't about revenge yet. It was about understanding the people who had betrayed me and not letting them control me anymore. But deep down, I knew a time would come when they would face consequences. Lila was always by my side, not in a controlling way, but in a way that made me feel stronger. She gave me advice subtly, helped me think through my actions, and even shared her own experiences with people who had betrayed her. It was strange because she wasn't part of my life before, yet she had become a guide I could trust more than anyone else. Her calmness balanced my chaos, and her presence made me feel alive again, even as my marriage fell apart. I could feel myself changing inside. The hurt was still there, but it was transforming into something else: motivation. Motivation to take back my life, to stop letting betrayal define me. I was starting to see that being powerless was a choice, and I didn't want to make that mistake again. My perspective shifted. I wasn't just the victim anymore. I was someone who could take action and shape what happened next. With every interaction, I felt a stronger bond forming between Lila and me. It wasn't just about attraction, it was about trust, understanding, and the sense that someone finally had my back. That bond gave me courage to face Marissa and Derek differently, to think strategically instead of reacting out of anger. I began imagining small ways to show them that betrayal doesn't go unnoticed, that actions have consequences. And yet, despite all of this, there was a softness that Lila brought into my life. Amid all the pain and planning, she reminded me that life could still be kind, that not everyone would betray me, and that love could still exist even after heartbreak. Slowly, I started allowing myself to hope again, to feel like I could be happy. By the end of that period, I realized something important. The man who had felt completely lost was starting to reclaim himself. I was stronger, smarter, and more aware. And with Lila by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next, whether it was confronting Marissa and Derek or building a life that finally belonged to me. Once I had started feeling stronger and more in control, I realized it was time to take small steps toward revenge. Not in a mean, careless way, but in a way that would make Marissa and Derek feel the consequences of their betrayal. I wanted them to see that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't someone they could play with. I wanted them to realize that every action has its price. At first, it was subtle. I would casually mention certain things to mutual friends, just small hints that made them wonder. I never outright accused Marissa or Derek, but enough to make them feel uneasy, like someone finally knew their secrets. I could see it in their faces when they picked up on the tension. I felt a strange satisfaction in knowing they couldn't act as if nothing had happened anymore. I also started using little moments to my advantage. At parties or gatherings, I would bring up topics that made Marissa and Derek uncomfortable without them knowing why. Sometimes it was a story about loyalty, other times a question that hinted at honesty and trust. I didn't need to say their names. The effect was enough. They started second-guessing themselves, and I could see the fear in their eyes. Throughout all this, Lila stayed quietly supportive. She never pushed me to act faster or do anything risky, but she was always there, helping me think things through. Her calmness and insight made me feel clever instead of cruel. It wasn't just revenge. It was a way to regain control of my life and protect my heart. Even though my actions were calculated, I couldn't deny that it felt empowering. I had been the victim for too long, but now I was taking the lead. The betrayal no longer had power over me because I was using it to grow stronger. And every time I saw Marissa and Derek squirm just a little, I felt a mix of satisfaction and relief, knowing they were finally facing the reality they had caused. I also started noticing subtle shifts in my own confidence. I held my head higher, spoke with more certainty, and walked through life knowing I had taken the first steps to protect myself. Lila noticed it too, and she smiled at me in ways that made me feel alive again. Her presence wasn't just comforting, it was motivating me to be my best self. Even with these small victories, I kept in mind that the biggest moment hadn't come yet. I was preparing for something bigger, something that would truly show Marissa and Derek the consequences of their betrayal. But for now, these little acts were enough to give me confidence and remind me that I could rise above what had been done to me. By the end of this period, I wasn't just surviving, I was plotting, growing, and slowly transforming my pain into power. And the more I worked with Lila, the more I realized that betrayal, as painful as it was, had given me a new perspective on life and love that I hadn't imagined before. As time passed, my bond with Lila grew stronger. It wasn't just about shared secrets or planning small acts of revenge anymore. We started opening up to each other about our lives, our fears, and our dreams. I realized that I could talk to her about things I had never told anyone, and somehow, she understood without judgment. It was comforting, and for the first time in months, I felt safe. We spent hours together, sometimes just sitting and talking, other times working on small projects or tasks that made me feel productive and alive again. Lila's presence gave me a sense of stability I hadn't felt in years. Her support wasn't just emotional, it was practical. She helped me think clearly, act carefully, and see the bigger picture instead of being consumed by anger or sadness. At the same time, my feelings for her grew in ways I hadn't expected. I started realizing that I wasn't just grateful for her help. I was drawn to her in a way that made my heart race. It was confusing because I was still healing from Marissa's betrayal, but it also felt natural and right. Lila was patient, never rushing me, letting me feel comfortable while guiding me through this storm. While we bonded emotionally, I also continued planning for the bigger confrontation with Marissa and Derek. My earlier small acts of revenge had given me confidence, and now I felt ready for the final step. I wanted to make sure they understood the full weight of their actions, but I also wanted to protect myself and move forward with dignity. Lila helped me think through everything carefully, making sure we didn't act impulsively. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. Being with Lila made me see that I could have something better than what I had lost. I started imagining a future where I wasn't constantly hurt or second-guessing people's intentions. I could feel hope returning, slowly but surely, and it was because of her. She had not only helped me face the betrayal, but also showed me that life could still be good. In those moments of vulnerability and closeness, I realized that Lila had become more than just a guide or a confidant. She was someone I could rely on, someone I could trust, and someone who made me feel alive again. The hurt from Marissa and Derek was still there, but it no longer defined me. I was learning to turn pain into strength, loneliness into connection, and betrayal into a lesson I would carry forward. By the end of this period, it wasn't just about what Marissa and Derek had done to me anymore. It was about what I could do next, how I could reclaim my life, and how I could build something meaningful with someone who truly cared for me. Lila and I had formed a quiet partnership, both in healing and in the careful planning of justice, and I finally felt ready for the next step in this journey. The time came when I knew I had to confront Marissa and Derek directly. I decided to invite them both to a dinner under the guise of a casual gathering, but inside, I had planned carefully. I wasn't going to explode or yell. I wanted them to feel the truth slowly, to understand the full weight of what they had done without me losing control. Lila stayed quietly by my side, giving me strength and calmness. Just knowing she was there made me feel unstoppable. During the dinner, I kept the conversation light at first, talking about life, work, and friends. Then I started weaving in small hints, talking about loyalty, trust, and honesty in ways that hit closer and closer to home. I could see Marissa and Derek exchanging nervous glances. I could feel the tension rising as they started to realize I wasn't the same man they had once dismissed. Finally, I presented the proof. I didn't shout or accuse, but I let the facts speak for themselves. The emails, the messages, the little lies that had built up over months, they were all laid out. Marissa's face turned pale, and Derek looked frozen. Their confidence, their arrogance, their casual betrayal, it all began to crumble in front of our friends. It was subtle but devastating, and I could see how it shocked them to their core. Lila watched quietly, her eyes reflecting pride, but also a sense of justice. I realized in that moment that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, proving to myself that I deserved honesty, respect, and trust. Seeing them confronted with their own lies gave me a strange sense of relief and closure, something I hadn't felt since discovering the betrayal. The emotional weight of the moment was intense. Friends who had suspected nothing were now seeing the truth unfold. Marissa tried to defend herself, but the proof was undeniable. Derek's arrogance faded into shame. The dinner ended not with an argument, but with a heavy silence that made everything clear. They had lost control, and I had regained it. After the confrontation, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, satisfaction, and even a sense of sadness. I hadn't wanted to ruin anyone's life, but I needed them to face the consequences of their actions. And through it all, Lila remained my anchor. Her presence reminded me that love and loyalty still existed, even in a world filled with betrayal. That night, I finally understood that revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes, it's about showing people that their choices matter and that you won't let them define your life. I had taken control of my story, and for the first time in months, I felt free from the weight of betrayal. After the confrontation, my life felt different. I had finally faced Marissa and Derek, shown them the truth, and reclaimed a sense of control I hadn't had for months. The relief was overwhelming, but I also realized that the most important part of this story wasn't just revenge. It was what I did next. I had to decide how I wanted to live my life now, without the people who had betrayed me. I made the decision to end my marriage completely. Marissa had broken my trust in a way that could never be repaired, and staying in that relationship would have been a mistake. It was painful, yes, but necessary. I saw the hurt in her eyes, but I also saw that she had made her choices, and I could no longer let them control my happiness. Derek faced consequences too. Socially, among our friends, he could no longer pretend to be innocent or respected. It was a quiet justice, but it felt right. Through all of this, Lila stayed by my side. We began openly dating, slowly building trust and intimacy. It wasn't rushed, and it wasn't just about attraction. We shared our fears, our past mistakes, and our hopes for the future. Being with her made me feel alive again, like I could trust someone fully and start over. I realized that love could exist even after betrayal, but only when built on honesty and loyalty. As Lila and I moved forward, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain and betrayal I had experienced had taught me so much. I learned the value of trust, of intuition, and of self-respect. I realized that betrayal, as devastating as it is, can sometimes open the door to something better if you are brave enough to walk through it. I also understood that revenge doesn't have to be cruel or destructive. Sometimes, it's about reclaiming your life, setting boundaries, and showing people that your happiness and peace matter more than their lies. I had taken that path carefully, with Lila guiding me, and it had changed me in ways I didn't expect. By the time I looked at my life after all of this, I felt stronger and more aware. I had survived heartbreak, faced betrayal, and even discovered love in a place I didn't expect. What once seemed like the end of everything had become a new beginning. And I knew, for the first time in a long time, that my life was mine again. After everything that had happened, I finally had a moment to reflect on my life. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and even the small victories of revenge had all led me to a new understanding. I realized that life can change in an instant, that people you trust the most can hurt you the deepest, and yet somehow, those very moments can lead you to the people and opportunities you truly need. Lila and I had moved to a new city, starting fresh away from the reminders of Marissa and Derek. It felt like a clean slate, a chance to build a life without lies, deception, or fear. With her, I found not only love but also stability, friendship, and support. I could finally trust someone fully, knowing she had no hidden agenda, just honesty and care. Looking back, I understood that the pain I had gone through wasn't wasted. Every betrayal taught me something about myself, about the kind of life I wanted, and about the strength I never knew I had. I realized that being hurt doesn't have to make you bitter. It can make you wiser, stronger, and more aware of what you deserve. I also learned that revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about balance and justice. Marissa and Derek had faced the consequences of their actions, not through chaos, but through the quiet certainty that I had regained control of my life. Watching them confront their own mistakes gave me closure without needing to stoop to their level. With Lila by my side, I felt complete in a way I hadn't before. We weren't perfect, but we were real, honest, and committed to each other. The pain of the past had forged a connection that was deeper than attraction. It was about mutual respect, trust, and a shared understanding of life's fragility. Sometimes I still think about that first moment when Lila told me the truth about Marissa and Derek. It was devastating, terrifying, and confusing, but it also set everything in motion. If she hadn't spoken up, I might still be trapped in a life filled with lies. Instead, I found a path to love, strength, and freedom I never imagined. Now, as I look forward, I know one thing for certain. Life will always have its challenges, but betrayal and heartbreak don't have to define us. Sometimes the people you think will destroy you end up saving you. And sometimes, the worst pain can lead to the most unexpected happiness. I've learned to trust my heart again, to value honesty, and to live fully with someone who truly cares for me. This was my story, a story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimately a new beginning. And while it started with heartbreak, it ended with hope, love, and a life I can finally call my own.